Voices amongst the static. A glitch in the simulation. A broadcast with no origin. You have found the Phenomenauts podcast. Hello, you carbon-based, stardust-filled cohort. You have tuned into the Phenomenauts, a bi-monthly podcast where we look at the weird, wonderful, and mysterious happenstances of this and occasionally other universes. Your hosts on this wild ride are myself, Dee, the amazing Amber.
Hello.
And our new host, Oscar.
Ahoy hoy.
Don't forget, we're everywhere, in the walls, basement, under the bed, Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, and Transistor. So please, give us a like, follow, share, comment, download, whatever floats your boat. We just love hearing from the listeners. And want to hear more of our lovely voices? Well, you can find our other podcast, The Trialogue, where the three of us talk about, everything from big questions like the meaning of life to milk being bone soup. And you can find that in all the same places you find this, apart from YouTube. Okay, admin and shameless self-plugs out of the way. How is everyone on this fine day?
I'm feeling a little bit better now, Dee, because you quoted me, so that's nice. Bone soup, that was my idea.
Sounds delicious.
Yum, 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 yum.
And yourself, Oscar?
Oh, I'm peachy keen. Don't know what that means.
Is that just like one of those things that people say?
Yeah, it's very reflexive. I think I've heard it somewhere. I could never tell you where from.
I've been to a buffet, he called it.
Yeah.
Really?
Peachy Keen's in Manchester, yeah. I think it might mean that you're hungry to eat some peaches. Like you're keen for peaches.
Oh. Ready
fit.
for a medium to large meal at my own discretion.
I feel like I could quote you on that. Okay, should I get us started by spinning by what now I'm calling the ceremonial wheel of predetermination to choose who's first to reveal their eldritch uncoverings?
My goodness.
Yeah, it's a name in progress.
Wow. Do it.
All right then. Spin the wheel! I don't know why I shouted.
Just rolls off the tongue, that name.
It's a compound name. It's like one of them big German words. All right, Oscar, you're up first.
Woo! Okay. So today I bring to both of you Pato's Paradox, which is named after Sir Richard Pato, who is an English statistician and epidemiologist. He's still alive today, and essentially he observed that larger animals such as elephants and blue whales tend to get less cancer than humans and mice and other smaller mammals. There's a couple of theories why this is, but there's no agreeing because it's different circumstances and things for different animals.
Yeah, I suppose an elephant is a mite different than a blue whale. Yeah,
so 4 elephants who have roughly 1,000 trillion cells, whereas humans have about 30 billion cells in their body. But elephants is 1,000 trillion, which is quite a bit more.
It's a big number.
Yeah, so, you'd think they would have quite a bit more cancer than, if you just go cell by cell.
Yeah.
They should all be getting cancer at the same kind of rate, yeah.
You'd think, but for some reason, they just don't tend to get cancer. So they had a look into elephants specifically, and they found out that they've got a lot more of the cancer tumor suppressing genes in their body. Specifically, they've got about 20 times the amount of P53, which is the master cancer suppressing gene, which is job of telling cancerous cells to sort of terminate themselves. So they've just got, in their string of genes, they've got a lot more chances of detecting when a cell's gone cancerous and telling it to leave respectfully.
It seems like something that, why haven't we evolved more of this?
Yeah, well...
You'd just think it would be a good idea, wouldn't you?
Well, they've looked into the side effects of it because they believe it may cause elephants to be less fertile, so they're less likely to have kids.
Oh.
But it's a bit of a trade-off, because if it lives longer due to less cancer, then it can afford to have less kids.
Yeah, like more chances at copulation.
And they actually did take that gene and they tried to give mice more P53 genes to see if that was a potential that we could do for humans. However, the mice they activated the P53 genes in actually aged faster.
What?
So they did suppress cancer better, but they also showed signs of a lot of premature aging, such as reduced longevity, osteoporosis, generalized organ atrophy, and diminished stress tolerance.
Generalized organ atrophy is a really horrific thing to hear someone say.
Yeah, that sounds pretty terrifying, I'm going to be completely honest.
So, on one hand, they can deal with cancer better. On the other hand, they're going to live a lot shorter lives.
Well, live fast, die young. Sure. I
Uh,
can dig it.
yeah, so that's one theory, but it really only applies to elephants, because when we look at the next big boy in the mammal kingdom, the blue whale, it actually has the same number of P53 genes as humans in the gene. So whereas elephants had like 20 more and we only had one, so do blue whales. But again, they seem to have this resistance to cancer at all. And what they looked into is the theory of super tumors. Let me find the name of it. It was
super tumors.
Yeah, so it was called, let's see, hypertumors, sorry.
Hypertumors.
I knew it was something along those lines.
Is that like, you got a bite, and then you got a megabyte, and you got a hyperbite?
So the theory was, because for a blue whale, so as I was saying before, humans have got 30 billion cells, elephants have got about 1,000 trillion. Blue whales have 100 million billion, so 1,000,000 trillion cells in a blue whale.
Wow.
So
holy crap.
They should be getting a ridiculous amount of cancerous growths just from living as long as they do and with that many cells. And they don't have the suppressor gene, so what's going on there? So the theory is that their cancers, whenever they sort of start growing a bit too much and forming like a tumour, the mutations keep happening, so the cancer will mutate again into a new cell that doesn't recognise the first collection of cancer, and so goes, I'm just going to start stealing resources as well from the body. But then it starts stealing the resources from the initial cancer and therefore starves it. And they believe it would just a constant cycle of cancerous growths would develop, then mutate into a new group that kills off the first group, which then grows big enough to mutate again, killing off the second group, and so on and so forth. So you never really have a chance for it to get into full swing.
But this whole time, the blue whales, they're going, geez, why do I feel so tired? I'm having my resources stolen by every kind of cancer, one by one.
Well, if you imagine a tumour, let's say a 2-gram tumour, that's about 10% of a mouse's body mass. But if you look at a human, that would only be 0.002% of the body mass.
Okay.
Whereas if you're looking at a whale, that's a 0.00002% of their body mass. So for them, as long as it doesn't get too big, it's barely any part of their body, so they could just...
Right. And it never gets too big because there's always other competing tumours, hypertumours, tumours of tumours.
That's one of the theories, because it's really hard to find cancer in a blue whale's body because
You know
it's
what
so
that
big.
reminds me of?
Mm.
Has anyone seen that episode of The Simpsons where Mr. Burns goes for like a health checkup, and the reality, it's like he's got this I think it's a fictional illness called like through the door syndrome, where it's like he is so ill, like with so many different illnesses, but they're all like trying to compete so that like none of them can get through the door. It's just imagine being the epitome of sickness, but you're completely fine because everything is at war with everything else.
Yeah, they're not fighting me, they're fighting each other over me. Wow. Well, so that is the case. Well, I suppose it's a theory, but that could be what's happening in blue whales. Like, they have illnesses defeating each other to try and claim the blue whale, but the war just goes on for the entire lifetime of the whale and then it dies.
Yeah, but it's a theory. It's one of the theories because, as I said, we can't tell because we'd have to get a blue whale into captivity that we knew had cancer, and then we'd have to keep testing it over and over again. And the blue whale's pretty big, so I'm not sure you could do it humanely.
I mean, if the elephant's got more of these genes, but the blue whale doesn't, but I'm assuming that the rule would hold true for any large animal. Can we not just, maybe find whatever big animal doesn't have more of these P53 genes, and then maybe they're a bit easier, like a giraffe, or, like a moose or something like that. Something that's a bit easier to keep in and keep checking on.
Yeah, well, we could definitely do it. Like I think they're still working with the whole adding P53 genes to mice to see if they can, not get the horrific side effects. But if we knew why blue whales could stave off cancer so well, we would definitely be able to do something with that. But we don't quite know.
I think there's I think it's naked mole rats. Or something like that. They just don't get cancer, or they don't age, or it's something crazy that we're researching into them because we're like, what the hell? This thing that usually kills us off, these just don't get it for some reason, and we don't know why.
Yeah, I think I read up on them as I was doing my research for this, because there's a bunch of animals that we look to try and solve all these diseases. It's like how in Spider-Man, where the guy spliced his DNA with the lizard to try and help him, but the unforeseen side effects turned him into a giant lizard man.
Yeah.
So
in this case, it's like, well, this cures cancer, and you go, oh, well, thanks, the cure for cancer. I can't believe they've been sitting on this for so many years. You juice yourself up, and you age accelerated, and you all your organs just melt inside your body, and it's just really not good.
Makes you think, though, if elephants didn't have these genes, would they live a lot longer just with a bit more cancer?
Yeah.
So it's an odd side effect, because obviously cancer, the longer you live and the more cells you have, the more you're susceptible to it. So is the trade-off that if you live for so long, you might as well cut off some of those years to give yourself cancer sort of immunity or tolerance?
Yeah. I guess that's what you said about the fertility thing. The trade-off is, well, I mean, evolution doesn't really, know what it's doing. It just goes off what literally is more successful. So apparently, it must be that if you've got more chances to reproduce, that's better than having a really high reproductive, chance per encounter. And, sorry, I just looked up the naked mole rat. I was like, oh, was it that they don't get cancer or that they don't age? It's both.
Oh, no.
And they can survive without oxygen for 18 minutes.
Oh,
and they don't feel pain.
They don't feel pain.
Yeah. Naked mole rat.
How?
Pretty badass.
How do you not feel pain?
Well, to be honest, that's something to think about, because they've had to do tests where they put naked mole rats in pain to see whether they feel it.
Oh.
I'm like, stop it. Leave that mole rat alone.
Yeah. Not a very nice study, that.
I know. It's the Frankie Boyle joke where he's like, "Oh, I'm just seeing how many fruit pastels it takes to choke a kestrel." Just popping them in its mouth. Yeah, we thought we'd just boil this frog and see whether it minds.
Oh yeah. There's one last point to this as well. So in a 2014 paper, they looked into what sort of take the larger animals. So they've larger cells are in larger animals, and they will take more time to divide as they're a bit more complex than smaller cells. So they looked into the effect on that, and maybe that had a factor into the cancer forming. So because it would mean less division of cells, which means less chances of cancer forming. That with larger mammals also having a lot lower metabolisms relatively for their size. So because they've got a lower skin surface area to their body mass, which means even though they're a lot bigger, a lot more of them is inside than on the outside, would mean that they need to go through less cell divisions and it takes them less energy. So they did have a look into that, but it doesn't explain quite as much why there's not that much cancer.
Yeah.
It's a factor, but they can't explain why. So yeah, that's what I looked into.
That is really interesting.
Yeah. It makes me think, I suppose, we don't have any really large, reptiles or fish even above a certain size. So, like, I'd be interested to see if it's just larger animals of every kind. Or maybe, like,
what about,
maybe mammals have really
crocodiles?
smashed it.
Yeah.
They're like the size of people, right?
What?
Crocodiles.
Oh.
Yeah, crocodiles. Big old croco rocks.
Well, they've
Like a shark.
nailed
Basking
their
shark.
evolutionary design, haven't they? They've been around for millions
They've
of
been
years.
around for ages.
Yeah, crocodiles largely unchanged from the dinosaur times. And sharks as well.
Wild.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I thought that was crazy. Someone reminded me that back in the day, the megalodon, the like super big shark, used to be afraid of dinosaurs that would come and eat it.
Wow.
I mean, in fact, was that on this podcast?
I think it might have been.
It was either on this podcast or after a recording we discussed about
Yeah,
it.
or it could have been the trialogue.
Or it could
It's
have been the
just
trial.
fantastic that the megalodon, the giant shark, watch out, it's going to rip you in half. It's 10 times bigger than a great white. And then if it saw a Leopleurodon, it would just get the hell out of there because it's about to get eaten.
Yeah, it's just like, I'm done. I'm out. All right.
Fantastic.
Should I spin that
Okay.
wheel?
Do it.
Let's do it.
Spin the wheel!
Coming to you live from the wheel.
It's you, Amber.
Rapapapapapapana. Okay, here I go. Watch me. Let's do it. So they say the moon is made out of cheese.
Mm-hmm.
So is the moon made of cheese?
Pretty sure not.
Sure it is.
It's probably not made of cheese.
No?
Or is it? No, seriously, it's not.
Yeah.
Or is it? No. Okay, so the moon isn't made of cheese. I think that's probably quite obvious to everyone. It's made out of rocks. So the highland Moonrock is what they call mafic plutonic rock.
Ooh.
Now, don't worry, I don't understand what that means either. It's apparently an igneous rock rich in magnesium and iron that crystallized from magma. So I did have to go back while I was reading about this and brush up on my primary school learning because I couldn't remember what igneous rock meant. Igneous is what magma cools down into. So, you get lava pouring out and then it cools down into rock, like solid rock. Sedimentary rock is when rock's slowly created by the depositing of sediment in layers and layers and layers. So sedimentary rock, sediment. And metamorphic rock is when existing igneous or sedimentary rock is exposed to extreme heat and pressure and it converts it into a different kind of rock. I wasn't really following that, but just a little brief reminder of the rock types there for you. I just wanted to cover that quickly anyway, but on to my actual point. Anyway, highland moonrock is igneous. Lowland moonrock is usually basalt. Not really sure what that is either, with varying amounts of titanium. Cool story, right? So where did the cheese myth come from? The first reference in writing about the moon being made of cheese was by the French rabbi Rashi back in the High Middle Ages, some 1,000 years ago. The fable that it originated from relates the tale of a crafty fox and a gullible wolf. The fox said to the wolf, "Come with me and I will supply you with abundant food." He led him to a well, which had a beam across it from either end, of which hung a rope with a bucket attached. The fox entered the upper bucket and descended into the well, whilst the lower one was drawn up. "Where are you going?" asked the wolf. The fox, pointing to the cheese-like reflection of the moon, replied, "Here is plenty of meat and cheese. Get into the other bucket and come down at once." The wolf did so, and as he descended, the fox was drawn up. "And how am I to get out?" demanded the wolf. "Ah," said the fox, "the righteous is delivered out of trouble, and the wicked cometh in his stead." So, that apparently is the very first time that we have a record of someone referring to the moon as being cheese.
Oh.
Well, I suppose they just say it's a cheese-like reflection. It looks like a wheel of cheese. So the idea of the moon being thought of as cheese is usually used as a metaphor for someone being credulous. So, being sort of gullible. The willingness to believe something. And it was never seriously considered by anyone. I suppose, bar anyone today who believes that it's made of cheese just because scientists say it's made of rock. So yeah, the moon isn't made of cheese. Good. I'm glad we got that sorted. So naturally, you would never eat the moon, obviously. Or would you? Unhappy to merely consider this question as a hypothetical, NASA went ahead and started feeding Moonrocks to cockroaches. As you do. It's such a bizarre thing to talk about, but yeah, they did do that. So when Apollo 11 brought back samples of Moonrock, scientists, they were quite sure, but they couldn't be 100% sure that they were going to be safe. And that they wouldn't contain, a deadly lunar pathogen. So they fed lunar regolith to insects in the lab by mixing it in with their food. They just dumped some of it into some fish tanks to see how that went. And some unfortunate mice and quails had it injected directly into them.
Well, that's upsetting.
Just a quick aside. The word regolith for, loose rock on the surface is a fantastic word. Regolith.
Regolith.
So yeah, of course, NASA didn't want a sci-fi apocalypse scenario happening where they contaminate all of Earth's environments with something out of this world, collapsing the food chain and/or mutating viruses into huge skyscraper-sized drone factories where smaller, but not that small, virus drones fly out and hunt you down by grabbing your head and injecting their viral DNA into your brain, assuming direct control and turning you against your former allies, friends and family. As you carelessly dispatch friend after friend, the viral monolith sprinkles trillions and trillions of parasitic headcrabs into major cities, effectively exterminating humanity in days. So they didn't want that. So, I don't advocate the injection of rocks directly into mice, but, I don't want to be killed by a headcrab. So, I'll give them that. Fair enough. Thank you, NASA, if you're listening. Thank you. So you have to understand that our current idea of how the moon formed, the idea that a Mars-sized protoplanet hit the young proto-Earth, shattering the crust and gouging up 73 quintillion tons of it into orbit, which then coalesced into the moon, that theory wasn't agreed on by the scientific community until about 1984, about 15 years after we first landed on the moon. Up until that point, there was also a theory that the moon was a fully formed moon that had been captured in our gravity well. So theoretically, you don't know where that moon's been. It could have been anywhere. It could have been orbiting a flood-infested planet for all we knew. But thankfully, that's not the case. Or is it?
What is this emotional roller coaster?
So, when the astronauts returned, they were quarantined for 3 weeks. Does that sound familiar? Ayo, quarantine jokes. Yay, where my people at in 2020?
At home.
That's if the quarantine just stays to 2020, but whatever. They were quarantined for 3 weeks where they kept watch on the Moonrock Junkies, which is the name that I'm going to give for the mice that were juicing up on moon dust.
That's a really good band name.
Moonrock Junkies! So apparently, Aldrin Armstrong and Michael Collins, the other guy who went to the moon, who we all seem to forget, the third guy who was part of that mission. I mean, he stayed in orbit, fair enough, but come on, give the guy some credit. He went to the moon. Michael Collins, everyone. Applause. Light applause. Anyway, apparently the three of them always wanted to know how the mice were doing, mainly because if the mice died, their prospects weren't great, but still, it's cute. They wanted to know how the mice were doing. Cockroaches and houseflies. They had the moon dust ground up and mixed into their food. Talk about space cakes, am I right? Mice and quails, they had the samples injected, and brown shrimps, oysters, and, quote, nondescript fish, end quote, had the dust mixed in with their water. All of the animals did fine, apart from the oysters, which all died.
Just the nondescript fish bit. Did they just find a fish tank and throw some at it?
Literally, this is a scientific paper. They were like brown shrimp, oysters, quails, mice, and
the other fish tank. Yeet.
It might have been
a fish.
It might have been a lab accident. They were getting ready to feed the space rocks to other things and accidentally knocked it into somebody's fish tank.
And then you've just got to claim it's part of the, claiming it's part of the experiment just covers up.
Yeah. Like, if it's part of the experiment, what kind of fish is that? Nondescript. But yeah, I mean, they did that, and even the guys who were the mice and the quails that were just having Moonrock pulverized and injected directly into their veins, they were all fine. But yeah, all the oysters died, so they deemed it was safe for the 3 brave moon-striding astroneers to come out of quarantine now that, quote, a replicating agent hazardous to life on Earth, end quote, had been ruled out. The oysters died. It was determined because it was their mating season, as even the oysters in the control group died as well. So from what I can gather, if oysters don't get laid, they die of a broken heart. So that's sad.
Never thought I could relate to oysters.
There you have it. Back in the 60s and 70s, for a time, insects devoured the moon.
It's been a lifelong dream of mine, that.
Take a little bite out of the moon.
I should be fine as long as it's not my mating season.
They're like, okay, you're going to go into quarantine now, and you're like, but it's my mating season, and then you just keel over and die. I think I would really like, if it's possible in the future, scoop up a bit of moon dust, get it powdered nice and fine, mix it in with some milk, and then just have a little moon milkshake. Maybe like some kind of, not like a herbal tea, but like a astronomical tea.
Moon juice.
Need to look into how much Moonrocks are. They did bring some samples back, but I imagine they're all kept under lock and key.
Yeah, I mean, there are Moonrocks that have just landed as meteorites. So bits of rock that didn't get, sort of pulled into the moon, and they're just still in orbit with the moon. And then sometimes they fall out of orbit and they just land, and if they're big enough, they just kind of make it to the ground. And there's a couple of those in sort of museums here and there. So you could probably do a museum heist if you really want to do that.
Yeah, I'll have to think about it or not think about it, because I'd never do something like that.
Yes, and we're definitely not going to discuss it in very real terms after the podcast.
As the you know what? I'm just going to use the word parent of this group. I'm just going to reassure everyone that I'm going to make sure they don't do that.
You say reassure everyone. You're talking directly to the FBI man right now, who's listening back through this once we've been apprehended in about a week's time.
That's such a mess to sort out. Like,
but yeah, that was a wild story. I've had that one on my radar for a while. I wanted to cover it.
Very cool.
It's just such an odd thing to talk about. I think my favourite bit was the oysters all died, so they said it was safe. All the oysters died. But there you go.
Well, I guess that brings us round to the last story of the episode, which is mine.
Oh my god!
So I brought something a little bit different to the old podcast, Rooney.
Okay.
I don't know why I just said that. Anyway, it's going to be a 7-episode segment looking at, well, the 7 ancient wonders of the world. Which was, going to come with one every week. Which was actually a list that was, seems to have been come up by ancient Greek tourists, actually. And week by week, I'm going to try and look into, each of them. And to start us off, I thought I'd start with the last one standing, which is the Great Pyramid of Giza.
Oh, fantastic.
What a geezer. I hate myself.
A diamond
I hate myself
geezer.
for that joke.
Yeah, I like that. That's my kind of joke, thank you.
Yeah, I thought it might be. Now, this does sadly mean I can't sit and debate the existence of this one, because I'm pretty sure we all know the Great Pyramid of Giza exists, right? We're all good on that, yeah?
They're all photoshopped, the photographs. Have you actually seen the pyramid?
I haven't in person, no.
It's everyone's in on it.
Right, cool, got you. And moving on. So, pyramids in general, most people know about them. Many have heard, vast theories on how they were constructed, and I'm not going to take hours. So, consider this a Cliff's Notes focusing exclusively on the Great Pyramid of Giza, yeah?
Okay.
So, starting us off, let me paint you both a nice little mental rich picture, if you would. So, you don't have to close your eyes, but I think it helps.
Okay, eyes closed.
So picture these giant, monolithic structures of old brick that are, still standing despite being millennia old. The sand everywhere, there's ruins. And now if we rewind the clock, some 4,000 years, the old bricks are smooth, polished limestone gleaming in the hot Egyptian sun. And towards the peak of the mighty tomb lies a golden crested tip pointing directly to the sky. So, you get the idea. Shiny, nice looking, shiny thing. Granted, the tops of them weren't necessarily gold. It could have likely been electrum, but, got to make that mental picture rich. And if I say electrum, you go, what? And if I say gold, you go, ah. So,
yeah,
you get me.
If you said electrum as well, I'd be more inclined to think that they were built by aliens.
So, why does it look like that now? And why did it look so nice back then? Well, you can actually still see some of the remnants of the limestone shell, if you will. At the base of it and in some museums. And it was in 1303 AD when the pyramids weathered a large earthquake which just shook loose most of the limestone covering it. After that, much was taken away to build mosques and fortresses over time because obviously it's a precious natural resource.
Yeah, that's like someone going, no, this big pile of useful rock, leave it, don't use any. And you're like, come on, gotta build stuff.
So, Great Pyramid of Giza, also known as the Pyramid of Khufu or the Pyramid of Cheops. Hope to God I'm pronouncing that right. It's the largest of the Giza Pyramid complex, and given that it's got so many names, I'm just going to roll with, the Great Pyramid for the most part. It's also the oldest of the ancient wonders, surprisingly.
Well, it's probably one of the oldest things.
Well, this is the thing, though. It's the oldest of the ancient wonders. Most of them aren't standing anymore if they even existed in the first place.
Just by virtue of how big it is, it's just still there.
Oh, you want to know how big it is? It stands at a whopping. It was 146.7 meters when it was erected, and even now it's still towered at 138.8 meters. And if I convert that using modern metrics, that's actually 50.47 Oscars when rounded to 2 places.
Oh, fantastic!
If you don't get that bit, check the last episode.
Now I can understand.
Exactly, it's just 50.47 Oscars.
I'd just like to take this moment as well to mention that it was the tallest man-made object in the world for like thousands of years as well.
Yeah, don't worry, I'll get to that.
Oh, I'm sorry. I stole your thunder.
That measurement also translates to a 1,204.86 cans of Coke, or whatever your preferred soft drink is. It remained as the tallest human-made structure for over 3,800 years.
Come on, that's so last year, dear. I just said that. I'm just having a bit of fun.
I know. So, why'd they build them? What was the point? Well, the pyramids were thought to have represented the primordial mound, which the Egyptians believed the earth was created from. And the shape was thought to represent the descending rays of the sun, because some pyramids were actually named in such a way that referred to the sun's light. For example, the name of the bent pyramid at Dashur was called the Southern Shining Pyramid. General consensus is that they were burial monuments, kind of like a giant gravestone. But some suggest that they're more like a resurrection machine, and that isn't as, wild and, I suppose, harebrained as, people would think when I say the words resurrection machine, but it does sound very cool.
I mean, I have to be skeptical about a resurrection machine.
Don't worry, I'll get there.
Sorry, I just wanted to say as well, the bent pyramid, that must have been so disappointing to be building that. And you get near the top and you go, oh, shit.
I don't think it's actually bent.
It is. They built it at too steep an angle, and when they were getting to the top, they realised that they couldn't build it at that angle, so they had to do it at a lower angle. And it was from building the bent pyramid that they worked out the perfect angle to build the Great Pyramids.
I see. I just thought it was a naming convention. I did not think it was actually a bent.
Oh no! Seriously, Google it.
Wow,
it looks dumb.
I will have to look.
3/4 of the way up, it changes what angle it's on.
Wow.
You kind of hope when you were building it that the pharaoh would die before you finished.
Jesus.
Right? Is he dead? Change the angle.
So, along the lines of, some suggesting that it could be a resurrection machine, that kind of fulfills a bit of the criteria of, filling the tombs with like practical goods that could be used in the afterlife, because that was a thing Egyptians did. They buried prized possessions and, lots of things in a tomb because they believed that when you died, you would take it all with you to the afterlife. It's why I think if I'm getting this right, and this could be a complete misremembrance, but I'm pretty sure that's why they took to mummification, because it was the best way they could preserve the body, so that when you moved into the next life, it was still all together, as it were. Granted, they might have stuck some of your organs in jars, but at least they were still in the same room.
Yeah.
What, do they expect the pharaoh to just wake up and go, right, let me just grab the old liver bottle and just pour that bad boy back in there?
Well, the Egyptians believed that the dark area of the night sky around which the stars revolve, so, like the circumpolar stars, which are the stars that don't set, good example would be like, the North Star, for example.
Yeah.
And they believed that this space was actually a physical gateway into the heavens. And one of the narrow shafts that actually extend from the main burial chamber through the entire body of the Great Pyramid actually points towards the centre of this dark area, suggesting the pyramid may have served as a means to send the pharaoh's soul directly to the home of the gods. So
wow.
you get what I mean? When I'm saying resurrection machine, I don't actually think it was a resurrection machine, but I think they believed that it served that function.
Yeah, it would help, we'll make it easy for him because he's such a good guy, the pharaoh. We'll send him straight there. We'll create a soul cannon and just fire him into the North Star.
Yeah, the soul can't get through a whole bunch of bricks, but it can get through a tiny hole.
Just make a perfect passageway.
Yeah, a tiny hole.
Ghosts can't walk through walls, you silly Billy.
So, all of the Egyptian pyramids were built on the western bank of the Nile, serving as the site of the setting sun, often associated with the realm of the dead. With that, anyone got any thoughts so far?
I remember someone saying it's really dumb what the pharaohs did. Like some pharaohs, they would spend their entire life. The only real thing that they could say they contributed to the world was a monument for their death. Can you imagine spending your whole life making your own grave and then getting in it?
When you think about it, in the way which they believed in the afterlife, and I haven't looked into this in an incredibly long time, so do fact check me on this. But they looked at it as moving into another life. You know, that almost as, I guess you could say that maybe a lot of the pharaohs were thought to have been, you know, very, very high spiritual powers, if that makes sense, almost akin to, like, you know, children of gods in a way. I think for a while they actually were considered that. Again, kind of trying to go very old information here. But if we look at, you know, if we think about it like that, life then's kind of like a stepping stone into, you know, moving into the afterlife, where you might have a better life, or you might have more, I guess. Or it might be more like an ascension, if that makes sense.
There's no point, you know, it's not bad to waste your time on Earth, because it's really just the preparation for the afterlife, which is where the real party is.
It's one of them. I'll go into it more at some point when we eventually cover more of Egypt, because we will get there. But the Egyptians had a fascination with the dead that goes so beyond, like, a lot of the stuff we think of when we think of death now. You know, we do not think of it in the same way they did, and it was a very sort of profound thing for them, I guess. It was a large part of their belief system.
It's just, I don't know. Like, I would just feel so upset if I'd just spent my entire life doing something that, you know, wasted my time alive to go, I was here, everyone, remember me. And I'm like, yeah, but what are we remembering you for? You just built a big monument to yourself for when you're dead. Yeah,
but I mean, I'm still sat here talking about the Great Pyramid of Giza, like, nearly over 4,000 years later.
That is true.
Or, maybe not 4,000 years, but you get the idea.
But if you knew that the guy who the Great Pyramid of Giza was for, say he did nothing but build the Great Pyramid of Giza and then died, like, on the last day it was being built, and they put him in there, then I go, well, yeah, it is amazing, but that guy's an idiot.
Some people just have a life's work, and it may not necessarily be for others.
It's all
something doing it.
It's all relative, really, because all the people who were, you know, helping build the pyramids, whether it be forced or whatnot, they probably thought it was a bit rubbish. Or
I will go into that later on.
But it's appreciated after all of those people are gone. It's like, for them,
it's also the thing of it's like, if you believed that was your holy work, like that was, I get that, you know, we don't believe in that, but if you truly believed that was your, you know, your holy work, that was your goal while you're alive, that was your purpose, then, you know, to oneself, it may be more profound, I guess.
Yeah. I suppose if you worked really hard today and created a cure for cancer that didn't melt your organs, and you spend your whole life doing it, and you go through trials and tribulations, you know, companies trying to sue you and governments trying to suppress you or whatever, and you finally do it and you go, oh, I've had a horrible life, but at least I created the cure for cancer, and you die, and the day after aliens invade and eradicate the human race, and then they just look through our history and go, oh wow, this guy had a really crap time.
Yeah,
I guess you never know.
I think it's all relative.
At least there's those big pointy buildings left.
Yeah,
in the middle of the desert. I mean, that's what they'll get to keep.
Yeah, oh god, yeah, because like it'll still be there when the aliens have destroyed us. Isn't that nice?
So on to the how, because how the hell did they build that? And something so sturdy that it's lasted so long. Like I said, all the other ancient wonders are gone or didn't exist in the first place.
Yeah.
Like, it's the only one left. Which is, I think, pretty damn impressive, to be honest.
How old exactly is it, or well, roughly?
I think the number I've got here is, I think I've just got over 3,800 years.
That is fantastically long in terms of human timescales.
That's a long time.
Amazing.
So how? Well, for starters, it's important to remember that the techniques used to build them were developed as they were making more pyramids. So later pyramids aren't constructed the same way earlier ones are, which obviously makes it quite difficult to figure out how, you know, each pyramid was built. There's no set way of doing it. The general hypothesis is that huge stones were carved from quarries using copper chisels, and then they were dragged and lifted into position. The Greeks believed the structure to have been built by slave labour, but archaeologists actually now think that the Great Pyramid of Giza, at least, you know, again, solely talking about Giza here, the Great Pyramid, was built by at least tens of thousands of skilled workers who camped nearby working for a salary or as a tax, you know, payment, as worker cemeteries were actually discovered in the 1990s.
Oh, it's almost like working on public roads for the government or something, and they just give you some money for that.
I'll go into it a bit more later, but yeah, basically.
Okay.
So, a Dr. R.H.G. Parry suggested a method of rolling stones using a cradle-like machine that had been excavated in various temples. 4 of these fitted around a large block meant it could be rolled quite easily. Experiments done by the Obayashi Corporation showed 18 men could drag a 2.5-ton concrete block over a 1-in-4 incline ramp at around 18 metres a minute. This method was also mentioned in several books, and Egyptologists generally agree that for a 10.5-ton block, it would work, but don't agree on the methods for, the blocks that are closer to, 15 plus tons and several of the blocks that are 70 to 80 tons. I just want to make sure that everyone's hearing that. So, there's some 2.5 smaller ton blocks. Most of the good chunk of them are 15 plus. Some of them are 70 to 80 tons. Now, I should have done some maths here, but I don't think I actually need to for you to understand how crazy that maths is, right?
Yeah.
That's a big amount. That's a lot.
What the hell is 70 tons that I could compare that to?
Well, I think isn't a car a couple of tons? If I'm being honest, completely honest with the pair of you in the audience, there's no accurate historical or archaeological evidence for how they got the blocks up the superstructure. We simply don't know. But there are some pretty good hypotheses. So, the first historical account of the construction came actually centuries after the pyramids were built, which was in an account by Herodotus, a historian in 5th century BC, which went as follows. This pyramid was made like stairs, which some call steps and others tiers. When this, its first form, was completed, the workmen used short wooden logs and levers to raise the rest of the stones. They heaved up the blocks from the ground onto the first tier of steps. When the stone had been raised, it was set on another lever that stood on the first tier, and the lever again used to lift it from this tier to the next. It may be that there was a new lever on each tier of steps, or perhaps there was only one lever, quite portable, which they carried up each tier in turn. I leave this uncertain, as both possibilities were mentioned, but this is certain that the upper part of the pyramid was finished off first, and then the next below it, and last of all, the base and the lowest part.
Ah, so they did build it.
So there's the answer to your question earlier.
They built the top first, and then the bottom bits.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think they just dug a big pyramid-shaped hole in the ground, and then they built it all in there, and then they just flipped it over.
Ah, okay.
Well, another
With
account.
a big lever.
Yeah.
Another account by Diodorus Siculus, a Greek historian in the 1st century, added that, and it said the stone was transported a great distance from Arabia, and that the edifices were raised by means of earthen ramps, since machines for lifting had not yet been invented in those days. And most surprising it is that although such large structures were raised in an area surrounded by sand, no trace remains of either ramps or the dressing of the stones. Yeah. So that it seems not the result of patient labourmen, but rather as if the whole complex was set down entire upon the surrounding sand by some god. Now, Egyptians tried to make a marvel of these things, alleging that the ramps were made of salt and natron, and that when the river was turned against them, it melted them clean away and obliterated their every trace without the use of human labour. But in truth, it was most certainly not done this way. Rather, the same multitude of workmen who raised the mounds returned the entire mass again to its original place, for they say that 360,000 men were constantly employed in the prosecution of their work. Yet the entire edifice was hardly finished at the end of 20 years.
Wow.
Now,
goodness.
These are some quite old accounts. We know a little more. Is the easiest way I can put it. And just to clarify one thing in there, the description of the shipment from Arabia is actually correct, because in those days it would have implied the land between the Nile and the Red Sea, where they're likely to have, quarried the limestone and ferried it across. Just if anyone was to pick that up and go, oh, well, that's not right. The majority of Egyptologists acknowledge that the ramps are the most justifiable method, using, different shapes and forms of ramp. But they also acknowledge that this method must be is incomplete, and must be supplemented by some other device. At the Great Pyramid and several other pyramids, archaeological evidence has been found of ramps. the most accepted and supported method to support it was levering, as mentioned earlier. But archaeological record shows evidence for small ramps and inclined causeways, nothing that would have served to build the majority of the structure. And to make it even more confusing, as I said earlier, it seems that the building methods developed over time, with considerable evidence indicating towards a more ad hoc construction. So, in a way, kind of winging it.
Okay. Yeah, because they probably tried different ways as they started to up the size of the pyramids.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, let's try this. Oh, that's not right. Well, how about this?
So, other ramps service to correct the issue of size, but then run into issues of, functionality, so whether it would have worked, and then the evidence, so was it actually there? So, a Mike Lerner speculated that a spiralling ramp beginning in a quarry to the southeast and continuing around the exterior could have actually been used, the stone blocks being lubricated using water or milk, both of which were, lubricants they could have had access to, and then drawn up on sleds.
That's a lot of milk.
There's a lot of milk.
Yep.
There's poor cows.
Plenty of bone soup.
So, when we think about levering, like I mentioned earlier, it's regarding, it being the most complementary method from, going off Herodotus' description. There was an irrigation device called a shadoof, which is an early crane-like tool with a lever mechanism. So it's a really, I've actually looked at pictures, it's like a really basic sort of lever-based crane, if you get me. Yeah, it's called a shadoof.
Shadoof. Like the Pokemon. I mean, sorry, that's Bidoof.
Which, this tool was normally used to lift water from a river or a lake onto, land or another river. Well, rather, that was its original purpose. Lerner speculated that levers would have been employed to lift the top 3% of material in the superstructure, but it's also important to note here that the top 4% of material is equal to a third of the total height.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, the scale of these things is just ridiculous. It's just... I can't use words to describe this because the thing that describes the pyramids is the fact that they're the pyramids.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's really hard to define something so iconic, I guess.
I would have to, I think, be in the presence of them to really get my head around the size of them.
So, without levering, some suggest lifting the block, blocks were lifted incrementally, prying up alternative sides and using stone shims, which are like little like hooky type, you knock them into the rock kind of thing.
Shims and shadoofs.
Like stakes, kind of, to move the stone up. And this was actually tested several times using materials of less strength than, pyramid construction. And they managed to lift 2,500-pound block up one course in under a minute. This was, presented as complementary to Lerner's idea of a combined ramp and levering techniques.
Wow.
It's one of them. If you do it well enough, I forgot the turn of phrase and it would have been really good, but the whole fulcrum lever thing, like all you need is to get it right and you can lift way more than you could actually lift. So a Jean-Pierre Houdin thought of a construction method for building pyramids in 1999 and actually utilized, computer-aided design, because, that is probably a really good idea. And built a functional model of the Great Pyramid, utilizing an external ramp for the first 30% and an internal ramp beyond the stones of the external ramp being reused. So basically, they built a ramp on the outside, then they built a ramp on the inside using the stones from the one they used to build the ramp on the outside, if that makes sense.
Yeah, like... don't just throw the ramp away. Turn the ramp into the pyramid.
Yeah. So Houdin's thesis remains unproven, and in 2007, UCL Egyptologist David Jeffries described the internal spiral hypothesis as far-fetched and horribly complicated, while Oxford University's John Baines declared he was suspicious of any theory that seeks to explain only how the Great Pyramid was built.
Oh, as opposed to all of the pyramids.
But we do know they were all built a bit differently.
Yeah, there's other pyramids that are just like a bit smaller than the Great Pyramid that would have been built differently. So, I guess it's like Occam's razor. Why would they have such a complicated method for this that they would not then employ for other pyramids?
Maybe the way they built the Great Pyramid, they took ideas from building the smaller pyramids and just scaled them up or changed them to be more effective. build upon them.
Yeah. I do think it was likely that, different things were carried over, but there's also, I reckon there's a fair amount of time between building pyramids. I think certain things get lost, or maybe, it's like nowadays if you have a project with several managers, each manager might just do things a little bit differently for no other reason than that's the way they know, or that's the way they do it.
Yeah.
There's what's the phrase? There's 50 ways to skin a cat or something like that.
That's horrible, dude.
It is a horrible phrase, isn't it? I realised after I said it, but it's one of those horrible idioms that you just get told your entire life and then you don't realise it's awful until, you're in front of an audience.
Yeah.
But yeah, another facet of Houdin's hypothesis is that it would explain the Grand Gallery Chamber, which appears to actually have had little purpose. He believes that this acted as a guide or a chute for weights, enabling the raising of the 5 60-ton granite beams that make up the roof of the King's Chamber. Yep, that's 5 lots of 60 tons of granite.
Wow.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And we thought that Stonehenge was crazy.
Yeah, don't get me wrong, Stonehenge is crazy, but it ain't nothing on the pyramids.
Yeah.
I thought I'd give us a quick breather moment, because I need a quick drink, but what are you two thinking thus far?
I just got my phone up while you were talking. What were you saying? The big rocks were between 70 tons and...
I believe 70 and 80.
Between 70 and 80 tons. And they managed to crank them up there, whichever one of the methods they did use, they managed to, get them off the ground.
However they actually pulled this off is amazing.
I just want to mention, though, when people go, well, we don't have the technology to build the pyramids now. I'm like, well, I think we could if we tried. For example, the Endeavour space shuttle weighs about 78 tons, and we sent that into space. So I think we've got a good shot at it.
From what I've gleaned from, reading about this, and this is just my very humble opinion, is that, we definitely could build the pyramids now. Anyone who's telling you we couldn't is probably lying. It's the bigger question is, we can do it now. How did they do it back then? Because right now, to do it, we have a lot more resources than they did.
Yeah.
We have a lot more tools than they did. We have a lot more explanations for things.
Yeah. It's hard to put yourself in that scenario where you have to give up ideas of engineering and stuff that they didn't exist back then.
Do we know specifically where the stones came from? Is there a giant upside down pyramid indent in the ground somewhere?
So there were lots of quarries, and I don't have them written down. We do seem to have very good indications of where they would have quarried things. I don't know if we have any actual evidence, but we know, roughly what materials would have been present, where they would have been pulled from, that sort of thing. I think there is likely to be evidence if you were to look into it, although I obviously cannot confirm that because I don't have it in front of me.
It's just so much stone that you'd imagine that if it's from a variety of quarries, then it's quite a sizable amount. But if you could go to those quarries and sort of work out where it was taken from, that'd be very interesting.
Well, here's one hypothesis that I thought was very interesting, and actually, I think aligns with some of the bits that you just said. So, it's called the limestone concrete hypothesis, and it's exactly what it says in the tin. What if they just cast those blocks out of soft limestone? So, it attests that the type of limestone needed was quarried to the south of the Giza Plateau, and it would have been dissolved into a slurry. Lime would have been added, and natron would have been added, which is a sort of ash composite. And then after some time evaporating, the pools would leave behind, a sort of clay that actually could be moulded and cured. Tests using similar compounds were carried out at the Geopolymer Institute in northern France, and it was found that 5 to 10 people with simple hand tools could create a structure of 5 1.3 to 4.5 ton blocks in a couple of weeks. Sadly, this method did not explain the granite stones of over 10 tons, which, is agreed were carved.
Yeah. I suppose they could have used that to do the outer shell, which is gone now.
Well, I think there's obviously a lot of separate methods that have gone into doing this, because there's a lot of different materials used to build the thing.
Yeah.
So what was it? The limestone concrete theory is largely contested, but Michael Barsoum and his colleagues at Drexel University published their findings supporting Davidovit's hypothesis in the Journal of the American Ceramic Society in 2006. Using electron microscopy, they discovered in samples of limestone of the pyramid blocks mineral compounds and air bubbles that do not occur in natural limestone.
That is compelling. I like that.
I liked that one a lot, and I think it really, for me at least, I think that seems very believable that it's like, right, so instead of dragging these huge impossible things so long and so far, they in fact just, found a way to make concrete and molded them like on site, which, granted, doesn't make it any less impressive that they would have still had to go through, it's still a logistical nightmare to organize. It doesn't make it any less of a feat. I just think the argument is rather compelling to me at the very least.
Yeah. It's marginally less of an amazing feat.
So, Adipayanjana, a petrographer, made a presentation to the International Cement Microscopy Association in 2007 and gave a paper where he discusses Daviditz and Barosum's work and concludes we are far from accepting even as a remote possibility a man-made origin of pyramid stones. So, that...
You know what, I'll leave it to the experts. I don't have any strong feelings either way about this.
I mean, the reality of it is like, I don't think we're ever really going to know. There's no solid answer to this. I think there is literally so many ways that it could have been done, and it's in such an area where things don't necessarily last forever, or rather, things that weren't designed to be permanent don't last forever.
Yeah.
It's a desert.
Yeah. There'll come a point where we're not getting any more information, and all that's happening is the pyramid is slowly crumbling more and more each day.
Well, in 1997, Mark Lerner and Roger Hopkins, a stonemason, conducted a 3-week experiment that made a pyramid 6 meters high and 9 meters wide, weighing about 405 tons. Made of 186 stones, weighing an average of 2.2 tons each. That's an average, so, 12 quarry workers carved 186 stones in 22 days using iron tools, which is a step up from what the Egyptians had. They would have had copper, bronze, and wood. But Lerner and Hopkins did try copper tools and noted they were actually fine for the task. You just needed additional manpower to keep them sharpened, which meant having roughly about an extra 20 people there. So, it's more of they used iron, but we know that you could use copper, bronze, and wood and things. You just actually, in fact, needed more people. They also made use of a front-end loader and forklift, but didn't use the modern machines to finish the construction. They used levers to lift the capstone to 20 foot, and four or five were able to use levers on stones less than a ton to maneuver by rolling, but larger stones had to be towed, so, pulled along. Lerner and Hopkins found that using sledges and tracks made of wood, they were able to tow a 2-ton stone with 12 to 20 men. The wood for this would have been imported from Lebanon at great cost due to the lack of wood in Egypt, and while builders failed to duplicate the precise joining created by the Egyptians, Hopkins was confident that actually, if they'd have had more practice, they could do the same type of joining methods.
So it seems like there's a lot of ideas and there's a lot of proving that it's technically possible to do those things.
A lot of people turn around and went, oh, we can't do this. And a lot of the, more wild theories on how they built the pyramids is kind of based in, false facts of, we couldn't have done this, when it's like, no, here is several methods for the fact that we could do this. We just don't know which one they did. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's there is almost certainly an explanation for it. We just don't know which explanation.
Yeah, for anyone who says, it's impossible, and this assumption that we couldn't have built it, then motivates these crazier ideas like aliens. I also
think it's very, it's unfair to whoever actually managed to do it as well to say it was impossible. It's like, are you just discrediting that someone, smarter than us could have been around years ago? Because it just could have happened.
Assume our superiority in terms of building and technology.
Hell, I think I'm probably stupider than someone in the past in a lot of ways, because I'm used to a lot of the modern, comforts. I'm used to being able to just look things up at, any given time.
Yeah.
That doesn't make me necessarily smarter. In some ways, I think it would make me stupider.
The species is smarter. I am stupider.
But yeah. So what are your thoughts thus far, just before I go on to, the workforce, as it were?
I was just thinking, imagine if you were a pharaoh and you go, you know what, we're going to build the biggest pyramid anyone's ever seen, okay? I want to beat the next best one, okay? Right, we're going to need these rocks, we're going to need this, we're going to need this. And then the logistics person's like, we haven't got the rocks, we haven't got the men. Oh, I don't think we can do it. And then you go, look around. I think I'm going to plagiarize. And you just take the biggest pyramid and you just move it stone by stone to another location. And then you go, look at my pyramid, isn't it amazing? And everyone goes, well, what about the tallest pyramid? And they look, and there's just a big square missing on the ground. And they're like, oh, well, goodness, I thought there was a pyramid here. And you just plagiarize another pharaoh's pyramid.
Oscar, any thoughts?
Oh, it's a big rock. I mean, somebody.
It's a big rock.
Somebody at the top end. So I'm trying to. The pharaoh said, "I want you to build me a pyramid, and this is how I want it to be done," and they just had to work it out. Or he said, "I want a pyramid. You're in charge of making it great," and somebody else had to work out how amazing it was going to be and how many big rocks they'd need. I think that's somebody's job. Job was either to make the pharaoh's wishes come true and build a big pyramid and plan it all, or they were in charge of the whole creative concept, and that's astounding.
I like the idea that, he's at the bar, he's shaking his head. Oh, it can't be done, it's just not amazing enough. Oh, my boss shouted at me today. I gave him this amazing pyramid design. I've cracked, I broke new ground on all these engineering concepts, and he said, not amazing enough, make it more amazing.
It's got to be bigger than those ones.
Guys, you can't build bigger than that. It's so big, that one's unstable. Well, come up with new ways of making it stable. Chop, chop, and then off he goes.
Well, let me tell you a bit more about the people who built it. So, there's estimates that range from 50,000 to 36,000. And the workforce was divided as follows. 5,000 permanent workers on salaries, working 3 to 4 months in lieu of taxes, while receiving substance as wages, which was an allocation of 10 loaves of bread and a jug of beer per day.
Oh,
a jug of beer. Ooh.
Zahi Hawass, an archaeologist, believes the majority of workers could have been volunteers. Estimated 4,000 of the workforce quarried the stone hold and set blocks, the vast majority providing logistical services, sharpening, scribes. So really, out of all that team, you're only talking about a workforce of about 4,000 doing actually the quarrying and the hauling and the setting of the blocks and stuff like that. They just needed a lot of people on hand to do all the stuff that surrounded that, I guess.
I always had it in my head it would be like hundreds of thousands or something.
And the tombs of the supervisors contain inscriptions detailing the workforce, which was 2 crews of 2,000 divided into gangs of 1,000, then further subdivided into files of 200, which were then further split into groups of around 20, each group having its own leader. So this was pretty well managed. Like, they clearly did some planning, some thinking, wrote a to-do list, and that's a bit of an understatement.
I mean, I know you said they sort of winged it, but, they didn't just kind of go, what do we do? We can't move the blocks. And they go, I don't know, come up with something.
They may have winged some of the techniques as they were going, which, you may need to do in any project, but it doesn't dismiss the fact that they would have almost certainly had to have planned this. Like, you can't just go, we're building a pyramid today. So, and I suppose this is my last segment on this. I'm sorry to have chewed your ears off so much, but a construction management company carried out a study. It was by Daniel Marn Johnson and Medenhall in association with a familiar name, Mark Lerner.
Oh, here he is again.
May recognise familiar. They estimated the Royal Project required an average workforce of 14,567 with a peak of 40,000. So, bringing in more workers when it was needed, that sort of thing.
Oh my gosh.
The Great Pyramid, from start to finish, took around 10 years and is made of an estimated average of 2.4 million blocks.
Only 10 years?
10 years? Oh my gosh.
Did they sleep at any point or stop?
I'll tell you in a minute. Calculations suggested as a sustained rate, the workforce could have kept a rate of 180 blocks per hour or 3 blocks a minute.
What?
with 10-hour work days for putting each block into place.
Oh.
Goodness.
The estimates were derived using modern third world construction methods, without modern machinery.
And I suppose without the weekends off either.
They might not have had a concept of weekends.
Well, again, this is, I suppose, hypothetical. We've no guarantee here, but I said, the way they looked at it is they used what do people in the third world who don't have access to as much as modern materials or maybe as prefabricated materials and certain bits of modern machinery, and they used that sort of time scale. But like I said, we'll never really know what happened. We're just kind of making very good, educated guesses.
So then why did I have it in my head that everyone was like, we can't build the pyramids even today?
Because it's a really big bloody conspiracy theory. It's very
street.
popular. It's been popularized in the media multiple times because people like hearing stuff that isn't real. Don't we all love fiction?
Yeah, true that.
And with this, it's such a speculative matter that I can very quickly see how some people would hear a lot of these things and without a suitable explanation that they had, a ton of evidence for, would go, well, it can't be that, it must be aliens. Because, to be honest, without sitting and thinking about it for hours, that is one of the easiest answers. In fact, I think it's the easiest answer.
If you're not an expert in, materials and building and construction and all that, then it might be the intuitive answers that you go, how we couldn't even do that now. But, if the experts, like you're relaying to me here, the experts say that we can, there's actually loads of ways that we can do it, I'm a believer.
Yeah, right. Well, 10 years, right? How many people were working on it, like minimum?
Workforce of 14,567 with a peak of 40,000.
Okay, well, let's if we're just working off the 14,567 for 10 years, and they all received a jug of beer every day.
And 10 loaves of bread.
Yeah, that's 53,169,550 jugs of beer.
How the hell do you do that math so quickly?
With a calculator.
You know what? Still astounding.
You know what? You'd have to... I did it with levers and complicated methods that involved shimmying large stones, but I did it. Yeah. Oh, wow. It's the numbers all over this, the size, the weight, the amount of people it took, the time. They're all just like unbelievable.
Yeah, that's what I mean. You hear a lot of those figures, you go, that's unbelievable. So I can actually really easily see how people hear that and go, we could not have done it.
Yeah.
Like, it's even things like, I know I was reading at one point, and I think it's probably in one of my sources, I didn't actually note it down, but, the smooth, the outside, it would have been a smooth flat all the way up. That would have been quite hard maths to do.
Yeah.
It's an incredible feat of engineering, to say the very least.
It's very impressive, and the bent pyramid was very impressive up until about 2/3 of the way through construction. So,
I still can't believe the bent pyramid was bent. I just thought it was like a title.
Incredibly complicated maths, not incredibly precise maths, but incredibly complicated.
So, I think I'd like to finish the segment with a quote from Dr. Craig Smith, who actually worked on the management study. The logistics of construction at the Giza site are staggering. When you think that the ancient Egyptians had no pulleys, no wheels, and no iron tools yet, the dimensions of the pyramid are extremely accurate, and the site was levelled within a fraction of an inch over the entire 13.1 acre base. This is comparable to the accuracy possible with modern construction methods and laser levelling. That's astounding. With their rudimentary tools, the pyramid builders of ancient Egypt were about as accurate as we are today with 20th century technology. Funnily enough, that was exactly the bit I was mentioning before I did the quote.
Yeah, that's what I mean though. The fact that they were able to nail it in terms of like laser leveling is the same accuracy. So it makes sense to people go, they couldn't have done that. They lived 4,000 years ago. They couldn't have just done that with such rudimentary tools. But the fact is they did, and it's incredible.
I think it's rude to assume.
Yeah. Like rudimentary, more like rude.
Well, I genuinely, like, whenever I hear someone go, we couldn't have done that, that was aliens, I'm like, rude. You have no idea what someone else could do.
That's like if I went, hey, look at this beautiful painting I've been working on for a while, and then you go, you haven't done that? That's too good. Incredibly rude.
You laugh, but I have had people say, Like, not with a painting, but I've heard people say that to me with other stuff, and it is actually one of the most insulting things anyone can ever say to you.
Oh.
Well, you know what, D? It's your job to not listen to them.
Like,
That's
don't
rude.
get me wrong, it's nice to have such high praise, but for someone to the other side of it is...
It's a backhanded compliment.
It's a little bit backhanded, yeah.
Yeah. Don't listen to that, D.
Nah.
You're like the building managers of old.
Oh. Well, that'd be nice if, we knew they were decent people.
Yeah.
I hope, I
well-
said, I hope that, I hope to God that the people working on it were employees and,
Yeah.
treated well, because otherwise it's pretty fucking horrific.
Well, then do you all like the person who said, you know what, why don't we give him a jug of beer as well along with that bread?
Yeah.
I mean,
Nice
I do
jug of
wonder,
beer.
just so total side tangent, the only reason it would have been beer likely is because water in those times was dubious at best. It was
How on
easier
earth
to
the
give
beer
people
was more
beer in place of
plentiful
water.
than the clean water is absolutely astonishing.
That boggles my mind every time. Like, we sit here and wonder why, like, I know, because we're all from the UK and, our culture is based on drinking and that's pretty horrific. And I'm like, how did that happen? And then I remember that we just couldn't have water for a very, 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 very long time. And we're quite a densely populated country.
Yeah. And alcohol is good for killing germs.
But yeah, so before I shift us on to the next segment, have you folks got any closing thoughts on the matter, I suppose?
We've spoken about Egypt a few times. It's nice to go into not the more supernatural stuff, but the genuine truth about the pyramids and just take them for what they are, which is absolutely like genre-defining buildings.
Funnily enough, that's exactly why I chose them to go first, because I wasn't doing a bit. The other ancient wonders, some of them you can just sit there and go, yeah, but did it really exist?
Yeah.
You cannot deny that's the right word, the literally awesomeness of the pyramids.
Yeah. You can't deny it. They still bloody exist.
They're still there.
Yeah.
I dream of going and seeing them one day. Like, don't get me wrong. They're the last standing ancient wonder.
Yeah. Amazing stuff. There are a couple other crazy theories that I've heard about the pyramids, which I'm sure we can touch on in future. But now we've got that primer for that was what
I was thinking, because I couldn't possibly go into every, conspiracy theory surrounding the pyramids. It would just take me hours. So
Yeah.
There's a little whistle-stop tour for yous.
Yeah.
And I think that brings us nicely to our next and final segment of the show, which is stuff that we like.
Oh, yay.
And if you haven't heard this segment before, because it's sort of newish, I guess, although at this point, is it really new? I don't know. But basically, we talk about something we've enjoyed between recording. Who wants to go first?
I can't remember whether I said this last time we recorded.
You can do a repeat.
What I enjoy this week is I've been playing Skyrim again.
Nice.
I slapped on a bunch of mods. I've got 200 mods on at the moment.
Jesus Lord, how unstable is that game?
It's you know what? It was very unstable. I spent 4 days trying to get it to run properly. When I finally, found out what the issues were, I then worked on it, and it's actually incredibly stable now.
Amber, that's like sorry to interrupt, but that's like an artisanal masterpiece. If you got 200 mods running stably,
It took
my hat
4
goes
days.
off to you. That's impressive, though. I couldn't do that. I would not have the temperance or the patience or the whatever, the goddamn gall to do that. I would not sit and do that. So well done. That is seriously impressive.
Thank you.
For a game that normally shits itself when I put more than 5 mods in, and I can barely be bothered to solve it when I get past 5 mods. I'll be completely honest.
Yeah.
So.
That's so many mods. I don't believe you did it, Amber. I think there's some supernatural outside work here that has made it work.
You got me. I am the ghost in the machine.
I knew it. It just feasibly can't be done, because I couldn't do it. So couldn't be done, surely.
But yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I've been playing magic only, so I'm just running around firing lightning bolts at people out of my palms. And you know what? I've never done that in Skyrim before, so it's incredibly fun.
Nice.
And any highlight mods? Any ones that pop out in particular?
The alternate dialogue camera mod. So instead of you just turn around and you're talking with someone, it zooms in towards them, swings into a third-person camera, and puts the little letterbox, black bars at the top and bottom.
Yeah.
And then when it's you sort of select the dialogue to say back to them, the camera swings around and looks at you and waits for you to say what you want to say. And then it flips back around. It really makes it feel like a different game.
I was going to say, I bet that
even
really...
just in that little way, just to change.
Does that sort of change in perspective? I imagine it, like, for me, I know that would really enhance sort of I suppose the narrative, like, how much, I suppose the role-playing element, the degree to which you feel immersed, I guess.
Yeah, it's the fact that you can see your character, and you usually don't get to. It just stays in first person, literally always, unless you get on a horse. So this way, in every conversation, I get to look at my character and go, you know what, you're looking fine. Caligus Janray is the name of my Argonian mage. Very fun.
Cool.
I've had fun.
Oscar, how about yourself?
Me, I have enjoyed... I've just enjoyed going out on a walk. I've just really enjoyed being outside for a bit. I think fresh air's lovely. I've not gone anywhere in particular. Sometimes it's just the shops. Sometimes it's just along the front, because I'm sort of right by the sea, so there's a lot of places I can sort of go on a wander.
Nice.
And sometimes you'll be very focused on things in your life. You're connected constantly with the internet, so news and talking to other people happens all the time. But when you go out on a walk and you just see like a random animal doing its thing, so there's quite a lot of foxes around here, quite a lot of rabbits, quite a lot of big birds of prey, and you just see one of them, and they're not plussed, they're just enjoying their life without the news. So
yeah,
I think going outside and enjoying nature's splendor,
taking in some of that natural splendor.
Yeah.
Really, really feel that in these COVID times.
Yeah.
I know. For me, like being able to just go out for a walk, I've like pretty much every day has been quite good for just getting out the house, trying to feel a bit more normal, I guess.
And it's not a horrific heat wave right now as well, so it's just a nice hot, warm temperature.
Yeah, I kept doing that in the heat wave, and it was not too pleasant. I'm going to be honest.
The weather was absolutely lovely earlier on, but I think that gets old fast. I think this is the right temperature for going out and staying out for a bit of time.
This country is not equipped to do... Like, if anyone's... I know a lot of our listeners are in America, right? You know how you guys have AC pretty much everywhere? We don't have that anywhere. All of our homes are built to keep the heat in because of how cold it gets in the winter. So it's just, if it gets warm in England, everything is just warm for a while, and it's great because we all moan about the weather whenever it's not sunny, and then when it's sunny, most of us just complain about it.
Yeah.
Myself included, because Jesus Christ. Like, for me though, right, I like being cold because I can keep putting more layers of clothes on, but with the heat, you can only take so much off until you're naked, and then I can't leave the house, and then I don't really want to sit around naked either.
Goodness, like some days I've been trying to get into bed and I take all my clothes off and then I'm like, I'm tempted to just tear my skin off just to cool down a bit more.
Thanks for that horrifying mental image. But yeah, what was my thing? Oh yeah.
What was your thing, D?
Yeah, I thought I'd mention Persona 5 Royale, which is a fun turn-based JRPG, which I am currently playing on the PlayStation. I think it's PlayStation exclusive. I've been trying to slowly work through those since I got a PlayStation 4 recently.
Yeah.
Really fun turn-based JRPG. Like I do like a JRPG. Like, quite a big fan. But this one, it's just got really good pacing. Lets you have a lot of control over the narrative, but still has these real nice, important plot beats that sort of keep you immersed and keep you in a sense of like, they keep a sense of linearity in what is majoritively an open world game in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Which I just really appreciate. Really, really nice, immense aesthetic, and a soundtrack that honestly is just so glorious. Like, I just spend all my time walking around the flat humming the soundtrack to this game. It's real good.
Yeah.
And I'm like 40 hours in, and I don't even feel like I'm halfway through. So I absolutely cannot recommend that game enough.
Oh, not bad.
I know. I absolutely love the soundtrack to that one. Although I've not actually full. You're like way ahead of me in Royale. I played the predecessor, but what a
Yeah, because
soundtrack!
there's Persona 5, which is essentially it's Royale but came out earlier, isn't it?
Yeah, Royale's like they took Persona 5 and went, what can we add to make this better and also adjust to make the user experience more friendly? And then they just slapped loads of extra stuff on it. I mean, it was already a great game and they just said, let's make it better.
What's really nice is, so I've been talking to Oscar a lot as I've been playing it, and Oscar's played the base game in its entirety and a good chunk of Royale. And there's certain features I mentioned that I have just been part of the base game, and then some features that I've mentioned that are exclusive to Royale, and it's like, yeah, this game was already very good. They just then added more good to it. It's the best way I can sum it up.
That's the way to be.
And unless anyone's got anything else to say, I think that might be us for this week, right?
Oh, good.
Yeah, all good.
Well, thank you for tuning in, folks. Any topic suggestions or feedback, drop us a comment or email us on phenomenautspodcast@gmail.com. We can even give you a shout out if you want, but we don't have to. We understand that everyone's good with names on air sort of thing. But in any case, peace out, folks, and we'll see you again in 2 weeks. Thank you very much for listening. Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye now.